so to speak.
I think I was going to ask, it's kind of a two-part question. I've heard mixed opinion about self-publishing, vanity press, that kind of thing. But like you say, you've got the challenges with the price and that, but it tends to be, at least with writing, with a traditional publisher, if you've managed to get them to buy your book and they're totally on board, you get the whole package of their publishing it, they're promoting it, there's the whole traditional process that you don't get with self-publishing at all. And so I guess I'm curious, you've professed to new media expertise, so I'm interested how all of you go about self-promoting your work and sort of how that works out.
Well, let me frame this a little bit. We operate in a sort of nebulous twilight zone between what is traditionally considered publishing and self-publication. A lot of artists and a lot of writers as well, they basically self-publish. You know, they produce the documents themselves, and they use one of these services. And if they don't, if they go through an actual publisher like us or like our friends at Self-Wolf Press or Rabbit Valley or For Planet or Antarctic Press, because it's actually Antarctic Press is not a good example because you guys have those guys have fairly high volume. But when it's such low volumes, you have to have a sort of, I don't know, call it agility, flexibility that traditional publishers don't have if you want to keep your head above water. Because traditional publishers, they just throw a whole chunk of money at something, and they have, you know, they have 20 products that they're putting out in a particular month, and they're certain that at least one of them is going to make enough money to cover the rest. You know, that's their business model. For us, obviously, we want every product to do well, and we want to not suffer the consequences if they don't. So if I'm understanding your question correctly, the issue is that traditional publishers, they see a good bit of fiction, a good a book or a good comic, as basically an investment, right? It's something that's going to earn them a lot of money, like an employee, and you're willing to spend a certain amount of time and energy and money on that in exchange for the perceived value that you're going to get back, which is the sales. Whereas with self-publishing, it really depends on how you personally can approach the audience and get them interested in your product. And you don't get the satisfaction of having a big, greedy corporate monster hawking your stuff for you. So there is that bit of ego boost that you don't get. I'm in the right ballpark.
Yeah.
So guys, how do you feel about the way that your books have been, or your products have been published?
And how you self-promote.
And yes, exactly. And how does that relate to you hawking your own products?
I've got kind of mixed feelings on both. Just because, you know, I used to be a big comic collector, and I of course go through the previews, the giant catalog they have, flip through it, order what I want, and think nothing of it. Well, I later found out that people that have previews advertised for them, they just ball them down until they can get them real cheap. And if they don't sell them, well, then they just give up entirely. They've got to get so many orders to even make it worth their while, which can really hurt us as individuals. But if you don't advertise the previews, you've got a much smaller market, and now you're trying to do it yourself. So now you got to find the time, which they usually say, you know, 80% time marketing, and the rest, well, that's your own time, trying to get this thing out here. You know, do you do it for websites? Well, do you go to conventions? Do you put it in other advertisements? I know for a fact that the more you can get it out there within anything, the better it is. But it's very time consuming, and sometimes to advertise, they want money. So for us, it can really get expensive trying to advertise it. And even though you get it out there and have people say, oh yeah, I'm interested, and you're like, all right, this is great. You know, your books printed up, you set them down, and everybody's looking at them, but nobody's buying. They may say something, but it doesn't mean they're going to buy it.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that can get really frustrating. And even as artists, we've got the same problem. Sure, we could go to a gallery and have them hang our artwork in the gallery and promote us, which, all right, this is great. Okay, maybe they take 40%, which is a little high, but all right, I'm cool with that. But then they start saying things like, well, okay, if you're going to show in our gallery, then you can't show within a 20-mile radius of any other corporation, gallery, show of any sort. And you're like, well, that's kind of really limiting. And some companies are kind of like that too. It's like, if we're going to publish your stuff, you can't publish with anybody else.
Yeah.
So again, it can really hurt, you know.
Or you couldn't show it anything online.
Right, right. So sometimes it's a bit of a trial and error. You just gotta go with what your gut feeling is and try something, see how it works. You're gonna have some probably knockbacks, and just don't let it discourage you. Keep trying. Realistically, I think that's where the free stuff comes in handy.
Yeah.
Because places like FA or Deviant or any other sites that help host other creative people for free really helps. It's just a great way of advertising without.
Do you find yourself getting into any of the new media stuff yet, like Twitter and putting up a blog and Facebook and all that kind of stuff? Or?
Well, I know that actually hurts me too. I don't have a lot of time to spend with emails and journals and Twitter and Facebook. And, I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And that's all people care about anymore. But they constantly want to talk to you.
Yeah.
They want to know what's going on. And it's again, time consuming. But if you can do it, it does help.
Yes.
Because they feel a connection to you.
Kind of a community.
They don't feel like you're up here and can't be touched, or you're some machine that's just locked in a closet producing work.
I mean, I heard of Alex through Twitter. It just randomly added me on Twitter. I was like, oh, who's that? And that's how I found out about it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting the way that there are these new tools. And yeah, Alex, you're probably more up to speed on most for all that sort of stuff. But.
Well, I did last year go on a bit of a social media safari, because it turns out all these social networks, they're free. It's cheaper than advertising. But hold on, before we get into this, and I would definitely like to talk a bit more about these technologies. You were talking about your experience with some publishers and the extreme strictures that they've placed on you. And this is, as I was saying, this is one of the things that corporate monsters, like traditional publishers, do. And nothing against corporate monsters, you know, they fill our bookshelves. But I'd be interested in hearing from Rukis. What was your experience like working with Plant? Now, obviously, they're friends of mine, so I know the answer that's going to come out of this.
Do you want me to be completely honest? I mean, there were some issues. Well, it was my first ever published work, so I was just happy that somebody approached me wanting to publish it.
They approached you?
Yes, they did. They approached me. I wasn't looking for a publisher. I was going to print it in like a little pamphlet form that was going to staple and sell it at Ace. That was the original plan. No, I swear to God, we had everything worked out. We were going to buy all of our paper like online, and we were going to print it all out on my printer, my one printer. But I got approached by Fur Planet, and the very first time we actually talked about printing a comic was at FA United, which was a month before I planned on releasing it. So it was last minute, so maybe a lot of the problems we had was due to that. And this is probably the one thing that I'd say having to do with this whole conversation is you need to know your volume. You need to know, do I have a title that is going to sell? Do I have a flop? Do I have a title that will sell moderately but over a long span of time? Cruelty was kind of like a burst sort of thing. We didn't know, though. A month before we were going to put it out, I knew there was a lot of buzz about it on FA because I was getting hit with tons and tons of questions and requests and pre-orders, and I hadn't even mentioned that I was publishing it. People wanted to buy it. So I thought, you know, wow, this could work. But I sat down and I talked with the guys at Fur Planet, and they gave me a big dose of reality and like a big steaming pile, and said, no, we sat down over dinner, and I talked to the guys from Fur Planet. I won't say which one specifically. And I had initially thought I was going to print like 100 copies for AC. That was my personal plan. I was like, yeah, you know, there's no way I'll run out. And he said 100 copies would be suicide. He said, you know, a rational, reasonable number for a first-time publication is around like 40 or so. And it kind of like hit me like cold water in the face. Like, all right, so this isn't gonna be like a big thing for you. Okay, I was willing to deal with it, but we decided that a good way to gauge would be to take pre-orders. And I would suggest this to anybody. Before you release something through a publisher, put out a shout publicly, either on FA, on LiveJournal, or whatever it is you guys use. I'm really technologically deficient, so the only thing I use is FA. I should do more, I know, but I don't even own a cell phone, so it's not doable. But I put out a shout on FA and said, hey, I'm taking pre-orders. They're going to be X amount of dollars, which was 14. And we decided from the very beginning we were going to stick with a flat publication price, and we were not going to change it unless it was selling really poorly, and then we would take it down. And within like a couple of days, we realized that it was going to sell a lot more copies than we anticipated. And it was, at that point, it became like the mad rush to AC. How many of these things can we print? And if I hadn't done that, we never would have known. There were some distribution problems due to the vast volume. And I don't think that the guys at Fur Planet are great guys, and they run their company, you know, as well as they can, considering it's not even their main job. But we weren't prepared for the volume that we were going to have to send out. So a lot of copies got to people like a month late, and there were some angry people. So that part of my experience was fairly unpleasant. But they were very easy to work with, like, for everything else. Really, it was just the volume that was an issue. So that's my entirely honest statement there.
No, I think that's totally fair, and honestly, I think that's one of the nicest problems you can have.
Yeah.
You know? Too many people want to give me money, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Put your wallets away. Oh, sorry, you had a...
No, that was good. So.
Oh, there at the back.
Oh.
But, yeah, you're at the back.
Focusing on unit sales, total unit sales, and profits per sale, do you think it's better to independently sell a comic or to go through a group like Sofa Wolf or another publisher and have them sell it?
Oh, speaking for myself, publishers, definitely. We have built-in audiences, we have websites that people visit frequently, and it's the mass effect. It's the having a large portfolio means that more people will buy all products in it. And it's simply an effect that everyone who visits the website, and most of the sales happen online. Well, there's different proportions for different publishers, but even at a table, the more products that you have that are good, the more products that you have, the more time people will spend on, and the more likely they are to pick up more than one product. And if they're picking up two, then maybe they'll pick up three, and then you can do something like a special offer. So independent publication, you can definitely do that. You can push it yourself, and you'll make all the money that comes out of it. That's great. With print-on-demand technology, you're not in for a huge financial risk. But if you go through a publisher, all right, maybe it's a bit more work. Maybe there's some logistical issues that you don't have as much control over as you otherwise would. But if the goal is to get copies in people's hands, then that's what we do. You know, the so-called Rabbit Valley, that of course.